I did a request. All right. Welcome everyone to today's Helm weekly developer call for July Thursday, July the 11th. This call is recorded, so if you don't want to be on camera, please turn your camera off. And the call follows the CNCF code of conduct. So please be polite. And today we have an announcement from Matt, Helm 3.15.3 to kick off.
Yeah, it went out the door. Wednesday was the scheduled day, and it shipped.
Nice. Thank you, Matt. So we'll go on to discussions unless there's any more announcements.
The one I have is that we just published a blog on the Helm 4 initiative. So if you look at the Helm blog, it's now been published. I'm going to be starting to promote that this afternoon, North America time. It'd be good to also promote that from our official channel as well.
So let me. Okay, I just put it up. I won't read it now though. I have to moderate. Awesome, thank you, Andy. I think Karina, did you get a link to put in the notes? I got one. Okay, discussion. Scott, you've got poke on community pull request 337. Update Helm teams with current info and links.
Yeah, it's let's see here. Am I unmuted? Yes, I am. It's just been sitting there for a while. It's not I don't think it's really blocking anyone. But we should update it. So it just needs another review. That's all.
Okay.
I realize we have many PRs that actually are probably priority. This one just is like an easy lift because there's no functional changes to anything. And I'm trying to clear out the community.
I've got a few minutes here. I can poke at this later today.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. I have the next item. I added this last week. And I meant to go through and find some examples, but since I didn't do that, the situation is I get the anecdotal feeling that we've been merging a few PRs for functional changes or functionality, but these things haven't necessarily come with documentation PRs. If my gut feeling is right, and maybe I should go find some examples to confirm. I feel like this is a bad habit because over time there's going to be functionality which isn't documented, and one or two things doesn't really matter. But I think over time it's just going to make it harder for people to use Helm. Things aren't going to be well documented, if at all, and it's going to cause confusion, or people don't know how to solve problems, so they go on to create an issue, and that creates effort for us. So the sentiment is that ideally we wouldn't merge any new functionality that should come with documentation. Is that a fair statement?
Maybe just an augmented statement that if it's docs that come with the code, yeah. If it's docs that are on the website, probably would be good to say, hey, can you also have an open PR that matches this? And then
yeah, like it doesn't have to be, say, merged.
Yeah.
But at least if they stick the effort into documenting the functionality, then it's at least the work is there to clean it up or get it merged or whatever later.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a good way to kind of capture this process, or do we think we can just enforce it at PR review time? Or
I can't think of an automated way to capture it. Scott, you may have an idea, but I can't think of an automated way to capture it. There's already a checkbox on the PR asking about documentation. And so it's one of those things where if they don't check it, if we don't see it, we can just politely ask somebody to do it and point them to where they need to do it at. I would wait until it's further along, but yeah, Scott.
I agree, Matt. My only thoughts are not really an automated way to enforce it, but ways to make it easier, perhaps. One is I've meant to do this for a long time now, but just it has not been the high priority of our lives here, probably for anything on the Helm project even. But we can change our PR template, for example, into a form. People just ignore often what's at the top, and if this doesn't, again, it doesn't enforce anything, but we can make a required field for someone to actually check the box, or something that makes it a little bit easier. That's just one very small thing. That's more of an encouraging thing. And secondly, I think maybe to make our lives a little easier, perhaps we could add a label. We have documented labels in our contributing doc, something like needs documentation, or needs, something like that. And whether we want to distinguish that between like code docs or like a corresponding website PR for the docs, that could at least allow us, when we're skimming maybe just make it easier for us to know which ones we want to hold off on, or when we do review them, have they added this since we added the label or something like that.
And some of this gets gets into workflow, because some of the pull requests we might try to merge, like some of the things Joe's gone after recently, were rather old and they got approved and merged, but the person just really isn't around anymore. Some of this stuff can just take time. And when somebody starts something, because it may or may not go in, they don't want to invest in writing a bunch of documentation around something they don't know whether we're going to accept. So that comes later. So I don't want to make it like a mandatory thing before we review a pull request, because who knows if this is the right implementation. It should come later, and it'll be a little bit dependent, right? We've just got to be fluid. Maybe we need to go write some of those pull requests ourselves and just add the docs ourselves once it goes in. If it needs to be in the documentation site, that's not just something that's auto-generated. But
like another angle is that, say, a bug fix probably doesn't need a documentation PR. So not all PR is going to come with docs. PR associated with a HIP, I would like to think the documentation would be tracked via the HIP rather than the implementation PRs. So there's like the middle ground where new features, which are small, just probably should have a small docs PR. That's my thought. But I agree, like it shouldn't be a mandatory thing. I think I do like the needs docs label, because it just indicates that before this PR gets merged, or even if it does get merged later, that that it should probably have an update to the. And when I say a docs PR, I mean like literally someone needs to write some verbiage on the community docs, make a PR over there to just add the reference to this functionality to help other users.
One quick note, Matt, you're so right. It's got to be like an end of PR workflow type thing. Maybe what we could do in that case is add a check for, like, so we manually add a label if we feel that it's going to need one, and just make it clear that that should this PR like otherwise get approved, we can't merge it before this label is while this label's there, that kind of thing. That might help us a little bit, at least at the end.
And that could actually be done like when the issue is created, there are certain labels that get added automatically.
Yeah, but how?
Yeah. There's label. There are tools for that.
But here's the thing, right? So we can check whether it needs docs or not, but do we not merge it until the docs are there, or ask them to do it afterwards, or one of us go do it? Because what if it's an older PR that somebody hasn't been around? We just need to ensure the docs are there.
Play it by ear at that point.
I'm hitting the same problem over on the SOPs project, where we merged things before products got released and it got confusing. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. We just need to, for any related documentation, need to figure out how to coordinate that appropriately.
How about?
And you're right, Matt. Like it's totally unreasonable for someone who made a PR a long time ago, and now we've reviewed it and it's good, to expect like, oh, well, we can't add that if that same person doesn't step back up and write that. I think if we do something like a label and a check before, at least it will be something that reminds us that we need to have someone do it, because we can always remove the label that we'd have to before, like manually, I guess, before we merge.
So how about we
Just a
just leave
thought.
it up to the reviewers' judgments, at least initially. I don't think this is a huge problem. I just think this is a building problem. So if we just make it less of a problem, it's probably good enough. So the statement I would propose would be that if you're reviewing a PR and it's fresh and you think there's a reasonable situation to contribute docs, then just politely ask the and I do like this label idea. I don't see why adding a label is very easy. So if we have a needs docs label, it doesn't have to block the PR merge. To your point, Scott, it could be something we can go back look at later and be like, what Scott merged? It still has this label. Does it still need documentation? But it just allows us to find these things. Is that a good proposal?
Well, I would also say, maybe we need to throw up an issue over on the website that just says, hey, this new feature was added. We need documentation for this, and actually create an issue so it gets tracked with something that's still open, and we point it back and we ask somebody to write the docs, but then at least it's tracked that gap.
Like that.
That's a good idea.
Docs issue label or something.
All right. I think this is enough time on this topic. So, I can bring it up again next week if maybe thoughts can solidify, or I could write something somewhere. I don't know. What do we think we should do about? Or we just agree that an issue or a label or
Well, I think like in short, one thing we can at least note is that where did the chat thing go? Okay, there it is. Yeah, so here's our like current documentation of how we use labels. I think it's pretty up to date. And here's our current list of labels. So if we want to do something about this, one of us should just like make a PR to the contributing,
Okay, I will do that since this is my item, and then we can move on, and we can discuss the details on this PR.
I'll also open a PR as an example of what I'm saying about a label.
Okay. Right, Scott, next item. Should we implement immutable tag repository rules across all GitHub org repos?
This one's quick. It's basically this feature's been GA for a year now, and I didn't even know it in GitHub. It just allows, there were things like, there's branch protection, there were tags protection, and there's other types of like very specific rule-based functionality that GitHub has in its repos. They added this repository rules feature that's more flexible, and they've also allowed it to be set organization-wide, and that's it. My main thought was this came up because there was an issue about adding to one of Helm's subprojects about adding sorry, give me a second. Oh, get pre-commit hooks, and one of the arguments for why these pre-commit hooks should be in this case, the chart testing repo as opposed to its own repo is that it can act on SHA. It can act actually on building the code too, by SHA as opposed by commit, as opposed to relying on things like releases, which can be mutable, whereas Git SHAs are immutable. And I was just like, well, that basically it just got me thinking. I made the argument that, or not argument. Yeah, I suppose like just the explanation that, well, in Helm, we don't force push tags willy-nilly. We actually have we really care about backwards compatibility. And so we just don't do that. We'll like make a patch tag if we have to, right? And that's for Helm, but also I believe we have the same human policy in our subprojects. And so this is just a way to enforce that we aren't going to force push tags unless like administrator has to override it for some really important reason. And that's it.
And quite frankly, force pushing a tag isn't really going to do a whole lot on any project that's in Go, because it gets picked up by the module proxy, and that's immutable. And so Go kind of squashed a lot of that to begin with, which is one of the reasons we don't do that. I think a long time ago they did, but it won't make a change if you force push a tag now.
And honestly, I didn't know that until I saw the issue that Matt, that you and George both said a similar thing on earlier in the year. So that was news to me. But either way, my question now is whether we ought to do that, and like moving forward, think about like rules that just like can help with things like we can show compliance and stability even more than we already have, and that's it. So I'm looking for maintainer feedback for anybody who's a maintainer of any of these projects, or anyone who has an issue with doing at least that first one. And I also sent out a note to the maintainers mailing list. Thanks, Matt, for that suggestion. I had previously done it only to the org maintainers list. So that's my thing. I wanted to present it here and see if there's any feedback. And I don't expect a lot of time for this one.
I mean, my short take would be, if there's no workflow which relies on mutating tags, and I can't imagine there is, then I don't see a reason not to implement the GitHub protection that prevents tags from being updated. Generally, updating tags is we don't have any floating tags.
Exactly. Yeah, like kind of container tag style. Yeah, nothing like that. And honestly, I wasn't even going to bring it up in this meeting except to tell people that we've already done it. But I think it's a good point that it's just kind of respectful to everyone to get feedback beforehand. I imagine if we implemented it, no one would ever notice. We could just say that we had. But anyway, that's it for me for that one.
Thank you. KubeCon China. Scott.
Oh, right. Just can anyone, I'll also ask other folks in the maintainers Slack and the maintainers mailing list, but can anyone go? That's
I think
here.
YXX Heroes in China. I don't know his actual name. It might be worth asking him specifically. I think because of time zone, I assume because of time zone, he doesn't tend to
just throw something into the maintainers chat and just inquire, but I don't think he's in Hong Kong. But we can check.
I honestly would, as a separate discussion, like to meet that person in some way besides text, which we've never done.
Yeah, agreed.
That's only because there have been conversations about like because there have been security concerns with certain other projects where an account was taken over without anyone's knowledge. We might want to have like a policy where we at the very least meet the real humans behind accounts over video or in person for everyone. But either way, yeah. Thanks. I'll reach out to the channel, including that person too.
Awesome. Anything else? We've got Michael has dependency update performance. What's the status, Michael? Oh, you go.
Yeah, it's just a gentle reminder, I guess, on this one. I think Andrew has already approved it. Scott looked at it before and approved it as well, but I think there's some minor changes since then, so just needs a second maintainer approval. I think the heavy lifting is already done on this one, so it'd be great to get over the line if some maintainer has a chance to give it the second approval. That'd be great.
If I'm remembering right, and yes, it looks like I am, I think, Matt, this one's in your wheelhouse. I think it's just really a glance to make sure that the change that you requested was made. It looked like it was to me, but that's it.
Okay, I'll take a look today. I got it up with the other one.
Great,
I
thank
thought
you.
it was already handled. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. HIP review. We have HIP for running hooks in parallel. Also, Michael.
Yeah, I guess we discussed this a few weeks ago as well, and Matt suggested that we change it, that we control it via a flag in the metadata. So rather than setting a flag on the command line. So I've updated the HIP along those lines. So if Matt or anyone else has a chance to have a look over it and see what to think of the new proposal, then that would be great.
Yeah, yeah. And the reason I did this was the idea was running them in parallel was suggested it be a command line flag on Helm, but there's a difference quite often between the person who creates the chart and the person who installs it. And the person who creates the chart would actually know whether the hooks can be done in parallel. Well, the person who installs it quite often doesn't know. And so if we could shift that configuration over, that just puts it in, the right place
I would agree with
for
this.
knowledge.
I also, I didn't see this up previously. I'll run my eye. I'll find some time to look at it.
Great, thank you.
Right.
I have one more super fast thing. Just it's more of a request than a discussion right now, but while folks are reviewing PRs, can we prioritize the, I think maybe 10 or so PRs that the folks from Octopus deploy went in and did non-maintainer review on? I'm asking that mainly because one of our big goals is to bring more people to help with reviews, and they've done a lot of legwork on those.
Do you have a list of these PRs that you could share with us?
Yes, I do.
That would make it a lot easier.
Okay, I'll paste
Yeah, if
them.
you could share that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Shout outs. Anybody have any shout outs? I'll add one for Matt getting the patch release out. It's just something which happens every month, which Matt does behind the scenes, so it's definitely appreciated. Thank you, Matt.
100%.
Social media amplification, the Helm for blog. We discussed this already. So moderator for next call. I can moderate it again next week.
I can do it. No problem. Just wanted to check. Also, by the way, I have tons of shout outs here. I think we have like no time to do it, so I just appreciate you all, and we'll save it for next time.
All right. Maybe we'll have we do the assignments quickly. We might. Notes. I can do notes. Issue triage.
You can do PR review.
PR review. Scott can be present next week. Any other maintainers next week?
Oh, sorry. I am completely wrong. I cannot I'll check. I'll follow up with you all on Slack. I can't do it next week because that's DevRelCon. I just didn't put it together fast enough.
Good. I set myself down for maintainer. Sorry, for moderator. Fine.
I think I'll be here. And if somebody needs to do notes, I can try and do notes.
All right. Issue triage. I can do some issue triage.
Yeah, me too.
You can count me for issue triage too. I've been labeling a bunch of them.
Nice.
NPRs.
Alrighty. Anything very quickly before we finish up? All right, we're at time, so thank you all, and speak next week if you're around.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.